are looking forward. We're looking forward to your preamble and introduction.
I'm looking forward to it too. Can you believe it's been just over a year of thinking about this? And I'm just so happy that we've got to this place. So you and I and Jenny and 58,000 other people joined us last year in our mass participation project, Moths to a Flame. There's a very, very gorgeous book of lots of moths and lots of poems and lots of artworks that we put together from the project, which was designed to encourage people to be creative and take their voices up to COP26. And so that's what we did, and that was all great. And when we were at COP26, we found ourselves thinking, what are we going to do next? We've done this massive project. How are we going to keep involving all of these incredible people who are interested in being creative in response to the climate emergency? How are we going to provide a platform for people to join in with us again? And how and what is the story that we're going to tell next? What are we going to try and do as creatives trying to respond to the climate emergency? So that was the context that we were in. And this year we've been exploring whether there's some kind of online platform that can help people stay connected, because we have people from all over the world who are joining in. So we have people from Nigeria, from Australia, from California, from Finland, all over the place. And we know that all of those people have, as well as all of our neighbours, have lots to offer. And so that's the background to Bury the Giant Club. And I'm now going to ask Kat to show you a little video that we put together to explain what the club is and what it's for. Okay. Hopefully that's all going to work. This is our first broadcast of the year, so who knows what could happen. Oh, it's the other one. So we've got a couple of videos that we've been making, one which is a kind of invitation to join in for people, and another one which is explaining the challenge that we're going to be giving people this year to join in the new mass participation project. Here we go. I wonder if it's going to work. What do we think, Kat? How's it going?
Ooh. Oh, I'm sorry, that was working for me. Did you not see it?
No, we couldn't see it. We can see your screen, actually. So I think maybe...
Again. I'm sorry, let me try again.
No, don't worry. This is part of the joys of doing live performances on Zoom.
It is indeed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right, let's try again. I'll open it all up again. That's how it goes. Here we are, right. We'll try again now. Sorry, everyone. Here we go.
Hooray!
Yay. Have we got sound? I don't have any sound.
No.
I'm sort of relieved. I think it'll be useful for everyone else if there's sound.
I'm sorry, it's not. Oh dear, I should not be in charge of technology.
Yes, you should. You'd be
well,
fine.
I don't. I can
No,
now
that's...
see. Can you see? You can see that it's all set up to share the sound.
No, okay. I wonder whether we can show it from Canva, or sorry, from another platform.
Yes.
Or What do you think, Naomi? Shall we talk about what the video says rather than show the video?
Yeah.
I can try through another window.
You want to?
Or
Do you
one
want to?
more time.
Do you
Shall we
want
have
to?
one last go, and then
Yeah.
if that doesn't work, then I'm very happy to talk about it, because I love talking about things. So.
I shall try through the club itself, which is here.
Ah, there we go.
Let's see if that will work.
Well, it doesn't sound like we've got sound again.
No. Third time not working.
Well, that's
Anyway,
fine.
everybody will love seeing that afterwards. They've seen tantalizing little
You can
tiny
share it.
introductions, and it'll be. And if those people that come back at 7 o'clock, they'll be able to see it then.
This is true.
Yeah.
So Bury the Giant Club is an online platform. It's run by a thing called Mighty Networks, and it is a place for anyone who wants to be creative in response to the climate emergency, to get together, to meet people who are like-minded, and also to make progress for a brighter, greener future. So over the course of this year, we're going to be inviting people to be inspired by moss in our project, How to Bury the Giant. So we've been really excited about moss and what moss offers us, how moss works for the planet. And we will be running monthly activities and invitations to join in, free stuff for people to do online on this club. And we hope that people will come with any sort of creativity that they've got to join in. So you can be creative in any way that you want on this club. So whether you like writing, or whether you like cooking or gardening or painting or theatre or music, or even just colouring in, then you can come along and go on this journey of inspiration with us, and hopefully produce your own creative artwork. So what we'd like to do by the end of 2023 is to have an exhibition and another publication a bit like this, because this has been lovely and very well received. We would really like to invite you to contribute a piece of artwork or something for the publication that we're going to sell in a big crowdfunder at the end of the year, in order to raise funds to support people who are in fuel poverty. So I very much hope that you will join us every month on Bury the Giant Club and in between, and connect with each other and have all sorts of fun. We'll have a look around the club later. Kat's going to show us all around what's in there. And hopefully over the course of the year, you can be inspired like moss with us and go on a journey with us to better understand these incredible plants and what they do for us in the world. So, as I was saying, anyone can join in, any sort of creativity, and I hope that you can share in the chat the sort of thing that you like to do that is creative. And as I said, you can be as far off the wall as you like. We're talking about it. You could even put, I like painting my nails, whatever it happens to be. Please put it in the chat, whatever it is that you like to do to be creative. And while you're adding your ways of being creative, I'm going to show you what I've been doing to be creative in response to the climate emergency and inspired by mosses right now. So here's the next technical challenge. I'm wondering how this is going to work. Right, turning on my iPhone, I've got it here. So hopefully I'm going to be able to turn the screen on. Come on, come on. Oh my gosh, iPhone glitches. Right, here we go. So in front of me, you can see some terrariums that I've been making. So these have all been made with what I call lost mosses. So things that have been kicked up, things that have fallen off things, things that have come off the roof, or you know, all sorts of places like that. And I've been very much enjoying growing or kind of encouraging these sorts of things to keep growing. And someone told me that this is some kind of polytrichum, but I'm not a moss expert yet. So I'm hoping that any moss experts who are out there might be able to help me know what this one is. But stepping on from there, when I realized that these mosses were quite enjoying being nurtured, I started to explore etching and engraving the surface of the glass so that I could really emphasize the kind of miniature world of glasses, of the terrariums, and the miniature world of, and what I was enjoying was things like, you know, being able to get the illustrations to speak to the landscape. And so this piece has got some big pylons in it. And the pylons go all the way around. And I've also got kind of underground theme going on. This is a wolf. I was thinking about that Norse legend of Freya, and I'm quite enjoying the kind of underground, overground thing going on. So the way that you do etching and engraving, well, the way that I've been doing it is firstly raiding the charity shops. So I've been finding things like this in the charity shop for a couple of pounds. And then you get a sticky back plastic or some other kind of mask. I'm quite looking forward to trying wax as a mask. And then you stick that onto the surface as that, and that acts as a mask. So you can draw the sort of thing that you want to cut out. And then you cut stuff out, and then you put a thing called etching cream. So I've been using this Armour Etch glass etching cream. You put that on the glass, and then that makes anything that you've not covered be affected by the etching cream. And that's how you get those marks there. And then you can emphasize them with something like a Dremel glass engraver or something like that. So I'm going to close that down now. There we go, stop video. And I'm going to come back to the main screen, and I'm going to say, what have people said, Naomi? What have people been doing to get creative?
We've had such a fantastic range from people enjoying gardening to people sewing and embroidering, and Biddy wants to turn her car as challenge the car as a raincoat. You know, and we've got a lighting designer and painting, etching. We've got a lovely range of creative things happening here. And what I like most, well, no, I don't. I love the mixture of the etching and the mosses, but I'm just trying to make a little link now, Chloe, to Conrad. I love seeing the mosses poking through your etched energy-based drawing. So, we have Brad Barraclough here, who, like I said, is from the Southwest Peatland Partnership and is responsible. He's got a big job in Dartmoor trying to support the restoration of all those peatlands, and he's also a moss lover like we're becoming. So I'll hand over to Conrad to talk to us a little bit more about mosses and the work that he's doing up on Dartmoor.
Thank you, Naomi and Chloe. Thank you very much. I love the terrariums. Actually, I think it's really good because it forces a kind of close attention on the little mosses, that little polytrichum in there, which is, for me, is like that kind of fine detail which is so often missed. And that, for me, is, I love that. It's, you can get lost in it, and that's yeah. Really
I like that too. That connecting with nature and thinking about all those living energy systems in there, making the
Yeah,
landscape work.
exactly. Things quietly ticking on whilst you're busy
Yeah.
not noticing. Yeah, it's a kind of reassuring thing. So I'm going to briefly rattle through a bit about a particular group of mosses, sphagnum mosses. So the bog mosses on Dartmoor, Exmoor, Bodmin Moor, that type of thing, and briefly what me and my colleagues at the South West Peatland Partnership are doing in relation to looking after the bog mosses and the places which they live. So I will just fire up a PowerPoint. Roger. Hopefully that's appeared for people.
Yeah.
Magic of
has.
moss. Excellent,
Brilliant.
excellent. So yeah, this is us, the South West Peatland Partnership. So just briefly, I have to do a bit about who we are. So we are a group of organisations largely led by South West Water, who so led by South West Water, but also in partnership with Exmoor National Park, Dartmoor National Park, Cornwall Council, the National Trust, Natural England, the Environment Agency, a whole bunch of organisations concerned about the condition of the peaty upland and lowland habitats in the southwest. And we go about, particularly our focus is on restoring these habitats, but also understanding and studying how they're developing, how they're declining, their condition, and that kind of stuff. My background is as an ecologist. My real interest has always been plants, even though I spend a lot of time kind of doing boring financial contracty stuff now. And isn't like Chloe was showing the kind of fine detail of, so this is a picture of a whole bunch of Sphagnum papillosum fruit I took on it's a clay pit in Bodmin Moor, and the kind of density and layering of detail and life and those kind of small habitats for me is just utterly captivating. And it's nice, actually. I spend a lot of time talking to groups about rather dry things like carbon accounting and hydrology. But actually, I quite like the opportunity to talk about just the aesthetic appeal of these things as well. So it's nice to be talking to people who are a bit more creative than a regular audience. So yeah, so what I want to talk about is sphagnum moss. So this is a group of mosses which are really quite distinct from your average moss, not to be disparaging to the kind of wall top dwellers that many of you are familiar with, including things like this. So this is Campylum stellatum, which is a beautiful thing, but not a sphagnum. Sphagnum mosses are very special mosses. So these three pictures here contain a lot of sphagnum mosses. They're these chunky, lumpy mosses you see on the moor in wet areas, and I'm sure you folks are all fairly familiar with them. What's really special about the sphagnum mosses is they have really quite unusual anatomical structures at a microscopic level, and this is a picture down my microscope taken with a phone actually, but shows what's really special about sphagnum mosses. So there are these very thin lines in between here. These are actually the active photosynthetic living cells. But what's so special is in between these lines, there are these huge net-like vessels. These are large dead cells which the sphagnum moss creates and then kills, and they are constructed purely to act as sponges within its tissue, so they actively take up water, these large dead cells. So the mosses, these sphagnum mosses, can hold extraordinary amounts of water within their tissues, up to around 25 to 27 times their dry weight, which is it's a unique thing among that group of among sphagnum mosses. No other moss or plant has those kind of structures. And why does it do this? So what's to its advantage in holding all this sopping wet water around it? The answer is the sphagnum moss is an engineer, so it is actively trying to engineer its immediate environs to favour itself. So when it gets wet, as it quite frequently does on Dartmoor, it soaks up a hell of a lot of water and it holds it around itself. It holds it on top of itself and within itself. And that makes it extreme. It rains and it keeps it wet. It will keep water in and around itself to the advantage of its own tissues, which are very well adapted to survive in a semi-aquatic environment. But most plants don't want to be permanently submerged. So it's a competitive advantage for the moss. And also in engineering its immediate environs, it actively acidifies that water. So it does a rather complicated process called cation exchange with the water, which makes the water actively much more acidic. And that again is an engineering competitive advantage to favor the moss itself. So bear that in mind. So it's making the environment wetter when it's already quite wet, and making it more acidic. And these sphagnum mosses, these beautiful things, they tend to be found in wet and cold places like lovely Dartmoor, but also, and naturally in places that are already at least significantly wet. So the top of a flat hill or the bottom of a kind of gentle valley. Those are the places where you'll typically find sphagnum moss cropping up, in places that are already wet, but making it much, much wetter once it's there. But not always in those places. So worth saying, it's quite often forgotten that there are lots of quite unusual sphagnum mosses which are actually associated with wet woodland, and this is one of my pet interests. They tend to be overlooked, but they are the most extraordinary and beautiful plants. And I'm sure you'll agree, I think very aesthetically appealing things, like really. So on Dartmoor, I suppose we've got, I don't know, 14 or 15 species, and they each have quite distinct appearances, colours at different times of year. Yeah, lovely things. And as I say, they're ecosystem engineers, so they are the keystone species for the bogs we get on the high moor, because they do this engineering thing, because they're holding water around them, they're making it more acid, and because of that permanently waterlogged, very acidic environment which the mosses maintain, it becomes very difficult for dead plant matter to rot down. So dead plant matter which falls into the shallow water around the mosses on the surface tends to build up, and that building up of partially decomposed plant matter, it not rotting down, is what makes the peat, which is what we're all about. So I mean, as the South West Peatland Partnership, the clues in their name, our interest is in looking at areas where in the southwest where there are significant bodies of peat, and looking after them, trying to ensure that they're not rotting away, respiring all the vast quantities of carbon they currently hold. And a peat bog in good condition captures carbon almost indefinitely. I've been to raised bogs on the Scottish borders, for example, with more than 15 meters of peat, and that is, really extraordinary quantities of carbon in one place. Vastly more terrestrial carbon than all of our woodlands on our little island, if slightly less glamorous, perhaps. So massive carbon stores as these partially rotted materials build up, and massive water stores as well. But not just holding water and carbon. The other thing I think is often overlooked is just how extraordinary peatlands are as living archives into the past. So we have been working since the beginning of November on a valley mire restoration on Exmoor, where these two pictures were taken last week. It's a very deeply drained valley mire, so about 2 meters of peat, but with a stream that's been dug through the bottom of it, and all the water's gone out of it. And we've done a lot of paleoecological work, so working with archaeologists, this is an archaeologist picture, to study what's stored in the peat in that valley. And as the pictures suggest, throughout the 2 meters of peat, there's huge amounts of woodland floor. So this is probably, we're having them dated, but this is probably circa 3,000 to 4,000 year old woodland floor. Again, I don't know, 2,000 to 3,000 year old tree trunk. This was slightly higher in the peat section. So that, as I say, these are material that's falling over, back in prehistory, and sitting on the surface of this sodden environment and getting enveloped by the primeval ooze and the peat and getting stored. And that's really extraordinary, being able to dig a hole down through the peat and literally dig back through time. If this peat is building at circa 1 to 2 millimeters a year, you're going down a meter, you're digging back through up to 2,000 years, maybe more, of history. And we've done a lot of work on valley mires in Bodmin, coring them to about 3 meters and taking out birch leaves and seeds, which we've had dated to 10 to 12,000 years old, so pre-glacial woodland floors, and we're working to restore areas of those sites as wet woodland where they've been drained. So really extraordinary stuff, the way peat stores this kind of ecological archive. But they are sensitive and they're easily lost. So this is a picture on Hanging Stone Hill about 5 years ago. This is a ghastly spot on Exmoor. Really, all the moss has gone. This actually used to be a very good site. It's been very repeatedly burnt at very short intervals and then had stock on it all year, until they die. and all the moss, the sphagnum moss can only take so much burning and grazing until it starts to disappear, and the purple moorgrass is in ascendancy at that point. On Dartmoor, the kind of impacts have been various. So I would circa 60%, 70% of the Dartmoor blanket bog has been cut over, so had peat removed by hand or by machine. But then also, you know, very extensive munitions use, Napoleonic times onwards. So we do a lot of scanning for bombs, and this area on Hangstone Hill, for example, was absolutely riddled. So once you start getting a digger in there, things become a bit dicey. So we have to be very, very careful. So that's probably had a direct impact on tearing these areas to bits, but also, you know, very extended cycles of burning and grazing over really, really long periods. And then in other areas, deliberate drainage. So very sensitive, these areas, and sphagnum, once damage like this occurs and the surface of the peat starts to dry, it can be lost quite quickly. But not all is lost. So what our partnership is really about is looking to reverse this decline. And this is the way we do this, principally in crude sense, is blocking up the gullies and erosion channels on the blanket bog. So this on the left, these two are Black Hill on Dartmoor, so right in the middle of the North Moor, out by Quinton's Man. There's Quinton's Man over there. So this is a gully being blocked with timber. This is a week later on the same gully. So the water table's coming right back up, soaking the dried out hags. You can imagine how dry these would have been sticking up out of the bog. These are kind of, it looks like these have largely been caused by repeated shelling. Apparently early 20th century, the hill was shot to bits, I'm told, by a very old fella. This is on Hangstone Hill on the other side of the valley. This is the same location, about a year apart. So this is the edge of the bog where it's been cut away, and also this is probably a shell crater as well, this very large hole. And then this is the same area where peat has been moved around by said digger, blocked up the holes, brought the water table right back up. And it's slow and grim work, but the responses on the sites can be extraordinary. So the mosses return as the water table becomes more preferable, and as they return, that virtuous cycle resumes. So it becomes wetter, the mosses come back, and so the mosses make it wetter still. So decomposition slows, carbon stores, water stores, everything starts to rebuild. And you start to see glimpses of what these landscapes have been and could be again. And you know, these are still landscapes which are going to be farmed, people enjoy, but will function better for everyone ultimately. So just before I stop, a couple of brief examples of before and afters, just aerial shots. So these are, sorry to burble on. This is,
no, you're not burble. It's absolutely amazing. I'm just keeping a little eye on the time.
Sorry, it's 2 more slides. So this one, I think it's a couple more of this one. So this is on the left, Black Hill on Dartmoor, on the right, Hangstone Hill. So 2020 and 2018 before works. And then after works, all the channels, we actually went across the catchment line on Black Hill, but the channels blocked, the water table coming up. This area in the middle of Hangstone Hill was deliberately left with no work as a contrast, a control area, and you can see quite a different story around it. So all the black areas on this are stored water at the surface, and these sites held water throughout the drought over the summer, which was lovely. And I think the last point I would make in terms of these kind of landscapes is just how far we've probably come from what they once were. And I think it's very hard in this country to remember quite how unwild our landscapes are. So this is an area of blanket bog in Tierra del Fuego, tip of South America, truly intact, this extraordinary fractal ecosystem of kind of infinite complexity. The same Cape Breton, so that's Nova Scotia, Cape Breton Island, this kind of quite heavily treed fractal landscape of kind of complex wetness. So I mean, it's we're chipping away at it on Dartmoor and working for the moss, but there is still a great deal to do. I think that's me.
Really?
Sorry, I know it's kind of rattling through it pretty quick.
No, I think we may be inviting you to come back, Conrad. Very sorry about that.
No worries.
It's a large and complex system.
It's a huge. That's it.
And those mosses, if you just walk past them and they're just a bit of green fluff, but exactly. If you take notice, it's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
they're the key to it all.
thanks,
They're absolute
Conrad.
key to it. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, Jenny, we are moving from the deep, amazing moss and energy being stored in the peat to being creative about moss down in Scrap Store. So how are you doing?
And Tom and Ray from Plymouth Energy Community, and we're in Plymouth Scrap Store. So I just wanted to show you, if I can, what's going on in the scrap store. There's all sorts of good, very inspirational materials here. And we are.
You have to come a little bit closer, Jenny, to the microphone. Or
Okay,
something.
so we are, is that better?
Yeah, a bit better.
So we're decorating these Bury the Giant, I was about to say moths to a flame then, Bury the Giant badges, which you can buy kits of these. We'll post them to you from the shop on our website, and we're decorating them with all sorts of goodies, wool and beads. There'll be a video on the website very soon with some examples of those. I'm just going to pass over, actually. I'm going to switch to the other video. I'm going to go on to this one here instead, because I think that might be better. And I'm going to just introduce you to Tom, who's here from
Hiya, I'm Tom. I'm an energy advisor at Plymouth Energy Community. Me and Ray are part of the energy team, and we help to tackle fuel poverty and reduce carbon emissions around Plymouth. We do that by helping residents with their energy bills to reduce them. We help dampen mold, and we help with supply mediation, pretty much all things energy. We do that through mainly talking to people on the phone through casework. We will sometimes do home visits as well, and especially we come out into the community to help out with things such as this.
Fabulous.
So PEC were one of our main, as many of you will know, one of our main partners for Moths to a Flame, and we absolutely love working with them and working with other energy communities around the country. So if you're not in Plymouth, then it's worth checking out where your local energy community is, and also where your local scrap store is, so that you can get some inspiration and join in with the club.
Yeah. And have you made ones today? So
I'm about halfway through this one here. So I was inspired by Conrad's photos, and now I'm thinking I've gone a bit, well, it's very green, and there were lots of other beautiful colours happening in the photos that he was showing us. So I'm going to have a dig through. Got a big pile of all sorts of different colour wool offcuts here, which are the majority from Plymouth Scrap Store. And Ray's got one here, which I'm going to show you. Look at this. So there's the Bury the Giant down the bottom there, but look at this burying and this. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's got all sorts. It's got a bit of balloon going on in there, some wool, some insulation, some natural fibres. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I hope you're having a good chat there as well while you're there.
If you've got time, maybe pop back in a bit and we'll show you how we're getting on. But we're having a lovely time. I'm really enjoying the chat so far.
Great. Okay. Great. Well, thanks, Jenny. And so from the making and being inspired by mosses creatively, and from the peatland restoration work that's happening in Dartmoor and moors across the country, we're going to meet John Howell now, who lives up on the moor. And in fact, we met John. Hi, John. We met you for the first, I met you for the first time when we brought some Plymouth residents and PEC, Plymouth Energy Community people, to come and have a look at the moor to see how it was being managed, restore a little bit using some sphagnum that we'd grown, and also to sort of reflect on the relationship between the moor and Plymouth, because all that peatland and moss is obviously absorbing water as well as carbon, and actually preventing floods or generally acting in terms of the climate emergency was benefit of all the people in Plymouth too. So anyway, I perhaps I'm wittering on now too much, but I'm just saying it's really nice to have you on this broadcast, and we loved your chat and about the whole way the soil and the carbon cycle operated. It was a really lovely contrast to the Conrads and to the artists of the world. So I'm going to hand over to you, John. Would you like your PDF of the
Yes, please.
diagram of the carbon cycle?
Yes, if you could put that up, please.
That would be lovely. Thanks.
So thanks for the introduction. You've all seen part of Harford, I'm sure, because as you head out on the A38 from Plymouth going eastwards, as you pass the big interchange at Deep Lane where you turn into Plympton, you get ahead of you a great view of the southern slopes of Dartmoor. So what you see there is part of Harford. So Harford's a village and a parish on the edge of the moor and running right up into the middle of the moor. So it's probably some of the closest peat to Plymouth is there. And I'm sitting up there. If you were driving through Deep Lane now and looked up, you wouldn't quite see my house because it's behind the trees, but it's up there on the edge of the moor. So I'll talk first a little bit about this slide and then about a summary of the kind of management things that we're doing on the moor to try and improve the carbon storage. So going on from what Conrad was saying and showing, this is there's a whole lecture course in this slide, but it's quite simplified, believe it or not, to show what's going on in nature. So the green boxes are where carbon is being stored. So it all happens with the interaction of the ocean, the atmosphere, and the land, water and sunlight coming and going over the land. And the black parts on the right just explain a bit about the minerals, the biodiversity, and the water which feed into the system as well. So in the middle, the plants contain carbon. They get the carbon through the process of photosynthesis from the atmosphere. So that's how carbon dioxide comes out of the atmosphere and gets into the ground. And then it's held in plants and in soil, mainly in soil. But you can store it in trees and furniture, from trees in furniture and structural timber and so on. So there are ways of using timber to store carbon and planting more trees. That's a perfectly valid thing to do. But then there are all the red things, which is how the carbon goes back to the atmosphere, back through the cycle. So we have to eat, we have to breathe, but we are contributing to the process. So there are lots of ways that carbon's going back out of the system again. And then along the bottom, there's the relationship between carbon in the soil and the way that it's going back to the atmosphere again. So what Conrad was talking about with peat wetting is so important. It's such a good way of storing carbon, and that's one of the things that we really can do on Dartmoor. So if I could have the next slide, please, Kat. So up on Dartmoor, you've seen some of the upland peat areas in Conrad's slides. This is the in-between bit. So it's looking down from very close to the edge of the peat blanket bog, down the Irm Valley and out over the South Hams. Plymouth is just off this picture to the right. So what you can see here is in the foreground is quite a peaty soil. It's not genuine peat, but it's soil that has quite a lot of carbon in the topsoil. It's quite peaty, it's storing quite a lot of carbon in its own right. And then down in the valley, you can see an oak woodland. On the next hill, you can see a plantation. So there's quite a lot of trees in the fringes of the moor, and they're storing carbon as well. Quite organic soils, so quite a lot of carbon in the soil, and then the carbon that's stored in the tree as well. And then the grassland, of course, that contains carbon that's being used by sheep and is cycling back through the system. So just a few words about the management of Dartmoor and how we have to try and fit this in with a lot of things. It's a very multiple use landscape, and there's lots of different interest groups. These interests are currently dominated by agriculture, so the grazing of sheep and cattle and ponies, and also by recreation. So it's a very important place for recreation as well. And the recreational users and the graziers are the two big rights holding groups. So they have rights to use the moor for this purpose, for access or for grazing. Agriculture is very well funded through the stewardship scheme and the agricultural subsidies, and that leads to it often overusing parts of the moor. Recreation is expected to be free at the point of delivery, but it always comes with an impact. There's erosion of footpaths because of people constantly walking in the same areas, horse riding, bike riding, damage from camping fires, that sort of thing. All of these things are difficult problems that we're having to deal with. And the environmental management of the moor is so affected by both of these, but the increasing pressure from society is that areas like Dartmoor, where it's possible to have a almost good environment, an almost pristine environment, that we should try and achieve that. But at the same time, we're still trying to grow food there. We're still trying to have recreation there. So the more that I've been involved in its management for the last 20 years, having lived there all my life and eventually taken over from my parents. But I've increasingly realized just how interrelated everything is, the soil, the vegetation, the water, the atmosphere. And of course, what you never really see is that interrelationship between the ocean and the atmosphere, which is what generates the rainfall and keeps things humid and not becoming a desert. So our key aims going forward on Dartmoor have to be really climate control as far as we can, with the storage of carbon wherever we can, biodiversity management, trying to keep a broad biodiversity, because without that biodiversity, the whole habitat, the vegetation and the soil condition declines. And also providing the recreation, which is so important for the mental health of people. And you've probably heard in the last few weeks, there's been a big discussion going on about camping on Dartmoor. And it's trying to find that balance so that everybody can do what they want and we can maintain a good environment. That has been our main concern as to how we move forward, how we improve the situation from the damage that we were getting before, when it was an open right, to a slightly more controlled but still very accessible process, which is working much more in harmony with the environment. So the whole camping debate has been distorted into a whole political thing about the right to roam. There's nothing about right to roam. That's not even considered as part of this. It's all about fitting an activity into the good management of an environment, and that's what we're really working to try and achieve. So that in a nutshell is what we have. The last thing I'd say is we have a very strong appreciation, those of us who live on the moor, of the special area that we're in. So one of the entities that will be joining the club is from our church in Harford, small rural church, and through the summer half of the year, we have every month a special spaces event. And this year we're really focusing on the environment and the spiritual welfare of the environment. And so perhaps some of you would consider looking at that, but on the website it will be linked and you'll be able to see what's going on.
That's fantastic. Thanks, John. And that it's really important to stress about the interrelationships between it all, between the population of humans that live on the planet, the rest of nature that lives on the planet, and also the impact all of that has in terms of having a healthy future for everybody and our well-being, isn't it? So thank you for introducing the whole carbon cycle as well, and reminding us about the sort of science behind the carbon flows and the energy, and also all the issues that exist on Dartmoor and getting that the interrelationships right. So now we're a little bit late, but we're still happy and perky, and carry on asking John questions if you have any. The last part of this launch is just to show you what the website, what the platform looks like. And Chloe and Kat, between you were going to just take everybody round the site and show them what sort of things have been happening so far and how to get involved. So like John's group, the churches group on and around Harvard, looking at the spirit of the moor in all its senses. This is the sort of thing that's happening on the club, isn't it?
Yeah, we have definitely got space for all sorts of different ways of getting creative, sharing creativity, celebrating what's happening, going on, and it is such a big experiment. And what we've got there at the moment is what we think is the right thing to start with, but obviously we're very much hoping that people will share what they would like to see and think about what they would like, because obviously the more useful and the more used, the more fun for everyone. Kat, have you got the website ready to look around, and are you ready to show people around?
Yeah, Chloe, so I'll show the screen now and show you the club. So hopefully you can see that now. I'll just hide some of those controls. Yeah. So this is the sort of main portal for the club. So to see this, you need to register as a member, which you just do with an email address and give yourself a password. And similar to lots of other things, you can opt in and out of notifications, and then you log in to see what's going on. So you can have a sort of feed of posts to see the latest news, see what people have been posting. And our welcome page hosts a video that my computer was unable to show you with sound, but you can go and watch that film that we've posted there and a bit more about the club. And then down the left-hand side, we've got different categories. So if you're particularly interested in sharing about books that you're interested in or knowledge about energy, then you can share there. And then we've also got our How to Bury a Giant page, which gives you a bit more specifically on why we're looking at moths. And hopefully hopefully you're seeing the pages as I click on them. Here's where you can share your moth inspired and your Bury the Giant inspired artworks. Chloe, please jump in if there's anything particular you'd like to share or you'd like me to show.
That's all great. So kind of three main sections: the introduction section, the how to bury the giant moss and more section, and then the space where people can get inspired. And so those could be suggestions of things people can try, artworks that we've seen that we love, activities that we have done that we want to celebrate, the book club, energy knowledge, and also if you spot any jobs or funding or other ways for people to deepen their experience of doing this sort of thing, then it would be great to post things there. Now, as I said, we do recognise that this is just a starter and that this might not be the right way of structuring it. And so over the course of this year, I really hope that we will all learn together a bit about what works. So we'll be adding all sorts of things in here over time. So for example, next month we're going to be sharing some information about how useful it is to use utopian ideas for helping us to vision a better future, and how that changes the way that you think. And we're going to be exploring how people are affected by eco-anxiety at the moment, and how creativity can help people respond to eco-anxiety and deal with eco-anxiety. So there'll be all sorts of lovely creative research projects that we'll be delivering with universities. And so hopefully something somewhere will float your boat.
Fabulous. It's definitely coming on. I was at Ashburton yesterday and with a bunch of school children, and we were looking at mosses, and they made some really beautiful charcoal drawings, and I think that's
Naomi,
the thing I might
you showed me a picture.
Yeah, I did. I showed you a picture, but perhaps I should. Oh no, it'll all go wrong. I won't, and we have reached the end of the session, but on burythegiant.club, I will be putting some really beautiful charcoal drawings of mosses, including of this wall screw moss, which is particularly lovely. You get it round your drains, and you get it on concrete and such like. And I even that is doing a bit of carbon sequestration and holding in a moisture. So I think I think we have come to the end of our first launch, and we've had a fantastic talk from Conrad about the amazing sphagnums and the peat restoration work that's going on, and what is underneath that surface of peat, and what those bogs used to look like when they're totally wild. That was lovely. And John Howell's up on Dartmoor, and how it is living there, working there, and managing the carbon there as well. So and all of you visiting and participating today and sharing what your creativity and your ideas, thank you very much. And we go forward hoping throughout this experimental year ahead that we end up with this lovely community, online community of people who all want to be creative and for a brighter, greener future. So we're going to be at 7 o'clock back on the screen. We might manage to show that video then. And we've got Paul Lunt, who's going to be talking about mosses, and we've got people from Southeast London and others sharing their stuff and making badges as well. So some of you may want to join us for a second dollop of Bury the Giant Club. So see you later, another time, another month, 7 o'clock. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Well done, ladies.
Well done.